Welcome, everyone. It's Rob Lauzon. I'm Deputy Chief Investment Officer at Middlefield Capital Corporation, and we're going to be talking today on a theme that many of our listeners and audience know from Middlefield over the last month. We've been quite excited about, which is the future of food and sustainability practices that are being incorporated and bringing food to the table, as well as interesting technology that is occurring in the agriculture space that we think is very exciting from an investment perspective. And today I'm going to be talking with CubicFarms, which is here in Canada, based in British Columbia, which is a vertical farming company, which is a technology that we think has a lot of potential. And we're going to be discussing the attributes of the company as well as the industry with Dave Dinesen, the CEO of CubicFarms, and Tim Fernback, the CFO. And so welcome, guys. And I just, maybe the first question here is just allow you guys to introduce to the viewers what vertical farming is all about, and then why does CubicFarms exist?
Sure. Well, great to be here, Rob. Thanks for letting us speak with you. So CubicFarms is an ag tech company, and we develop commercial scale automated indoor technologies that allow the localization of growing commercial scale amounts of produce and live green animal feed anywhere on Earth 12 months a year. So why does vertical farming exist? Because at the moment, the world is doing something that's a little bit silly. We're growing enormous amounts of food on large centralized farms, and we're shipping it enormous distances in order to get it to where people actually live. And during that process, several things happen which aren't ideal. First of all, a lot of food is lost in transit and simply goes bad. Secondly, we're burning an enormous amount of fossil fuels to get that food from where people live from where it's grown. And lastly, we aren't positioning ourselves for food security. Things can happen like pandemics, borders can be closed, supply chains can be disrupted, and so it creates a significant food insecurity for countries. And so just like 50 years ago, greenhouses came on the scene and they began to change how an amount of produce in the world was grown and allowed it to be grown closer to where people live and all year round. Vertical farming technology and CubicFarms technology is sort of the next generation of that, whereas you can actually grow it even closer to where people live and even more reliably because you're in a true closed environment. Greenhouses are still, relevantly exposed to the weather. They're still exposed to pests and things, whereas controlled environment agriculture is truly enclosed so that you have control over all of those in environmental irrigation, free from pests, don't need pesticides, all of these sorts of things. And then I would say, lastly, it enables a much more predictable, quicker, faster, better growing. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can get a little more granular than on your company. And so how do you replace field farming locally? And the other side of your business, which I know you want to talk about, which I find pretty fascinating, is how do you replace the grazing lands indoors? When I lived in Calgary, I remember driving to Banff and always just seeing the vast amount of livestock grazing. And I never thought anything of it from a negative environmental aspect. But it looks like what you're doing is quite compelling on the livestock side. Not only bringing lettuce to our table.
Sure. So let me talk about the cubic farm technology, which is sort of the produce, leafy greens, and other plants, and then in a moment on the live green animal feed side, or our hydrogreen division. So your question was, how would we replace field farming, or how does it compare
Locally,
to
yeah.
field farming? Yeah, locally. Well, interestingly, there's not a lot of field farming most of the year for these high volume and high value leafy green crops. So all of your salad products, most of the year, are not grown in fields in Canada. They're grown in California, Arizona, Mexico, and they're imported, obviously very, very long distances. And so you're really not comparing what happens locally here. You're actually localizing something that isn't happening here most of the time. So that's where vertical farming allows these high volume, high value, but relatively short shelf life, but ever more popular products to be locally grown. And so our technology allows that to happen. And because we focused on the mechanization or the automation of this indoor farming, we're able to grow, our customers are able to purchase these systems and then grow produce at a price that allows them to get on the shelves at a similar price to what would come out of the ground in California or Arizona or something, so that you can truly replace importing of these products. Yeah. On the live green animal feed side of the business, yeah, it's just fascinating. So one of our machines, one of our HydroGreen machines, we call it a vertical pasture. It'll replace about 200 acres of grazing land. Well, why does that matter? Right now in North America, and especially in the United States, the drought conditions are so acute that farmers are actually struggling to be able to reliably feed their animals. So, for example, it takes an enormous amount of irrigation water to irrigate grazing lands. It takes an enormous amount of fresh water. And then it takes an enormous amount of water to grow, various silage type crops, corn and what have you. And so if all of a sudden you're struggling to irrigate your lands, irrigate your forage, how are you going to reliably feed, thousands of mouths every day, a few times a day? It's an acute issue. So just the fresh water issue and the severe drought that's happening, our technology allows you to replace hundreds of acres of grazing lands, per machine, and yet use only a fraction of the fresh water. And you now have reliable growing because you use so little water by comparison, and because you can grow 12 months a year live green animal feed, where we go from seed to harvest every 6 days. So it's a fully automated machine. It's 70 feet long, 20 feet high. It's an enormous machine. And each machine will grow thousands and thousands of pounds of live green animal feed every day that's automatically seeded, growing, automatic harvesting. And then that feed goes out to those animals reliably every day. And it's not just the growing of that feed and saving the water, which has no pesticides, no fertilizer even. It's just water and seed that's now sprouted. When you feed the animal that sprouted grain, instead of just giving them grain and hay, which is often a majority of their feed, the sprouted grain exposes all those nutrients, all of those enzymes. So when the animal consumes that feed, all of those nutrients and enzymes are readily available to that animal. So that animal is then able to absorb all of that nutrition. So one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases is livestock farming. 14.5% of all greenhouse gases come from livestock farming. When you're able to feed animals in this way, the animal can absorb all those nutrients, all those enzymes, and then they pass far less methane, and then their waste is far less nutrient dense. So it's much less harmful to, say, nearby water tables and streams and lakes and rivers and all of that runoff. So it's good for the animal, it's good for the environment, it's obviously good for the farm, the farmer, and of course the consumer. So there's lots of compelling reasons why you would, it's not that the animals still wouldn't run around, or walk around in the fields, but this is a much more reliable, sustainable, better for the animal way of feeding them than just giving them lots of grain and hay.
Well, it's fascinating. Yeah, I guess you're addressing, two things that, the greenhouse gas issue with agriculture, and then, just myself and all of the viewers know, we're in the grocery store getting those pre-bagged salad mixes. We're always putting our hands in the back trying to get the ones that don't expire in a day or two, right? Because they've been sitting on a truck for a week. So you're doing some really interesting things that at Cubic. One area that investors and consumers are I guess demanding is a more sustainable practices. And so how is Cubic addressing this in terms of its product lines, which you've addressed this a bit with already some of your answers, but your product lines and then your operations, are you producing things and your manufacturing, is that you're doing that in a sustainable fashion?
Sure. So our systems are largely built out of stainless steel. So they're built to last for generations. So one of our machines is going to outlive, the three of us on this call right now. And so very, very long, life in these systems that are going to grow, millions and millions and millions of plants over their lifetime. One of our largest farms that we've just finished installing is in Calgary, Alberta. It's 24 of our cubic farm growing modules, and it's a completely solar powered facility. So it's literally the greenest, farm on the planet, and it will produce produce 12 months a year for generations locally. When you compare that to all of the products that are growing in that Calgary farm now are coming from thousands of miles away currently, either California, Arizona, or Mexico, or who knows where. And to be able to localize all that, you can think of the enormous amount of diesel fuel and energy that is not being expended to get that food to where people live. And you talk about expiry date. Because we're able to grow locally, you're already cutting an enormous amount of time from the time the product is harvested till it gets to you at home. So you're already, the odds are you're going to eat it before you throw it away. But because of how we're able to grow and often harvest live and leave the root on until the moment you're about to eat it, it can live for weeks and weeks in your fridge and still taste really, really good and retain all its nutritional value and be crunchy and delicious. And so, people ask what the future of food looks like, and I often, reply, it actually looks really delicious. If you eat food grown in a cubic farm, it's spectacular. The taste, the crispiness, the nutrition, it's great. So it's not that it's just all about sustainability. It's also delicious. And you're saving water. You're not eating pesticides with your meal. And you know that you're doing something local. Same with animals that are fed with hydrogreen. You're gonna, that animal's gonna live longer, have more babies, obviously, be less harmful to the environment. But as well, meat that's from an animal that's fed with hydrogreen is absolutely top quality beef. Milk products, you'll get more milk, better quality milk, higher milk fat percentages. It's also very positive, and that's one of the things that we all want to do right by the environment, and using this kind of technology is much better for the environment and much more sustainable. But it's also delicious, and anytime you can tick both of those boxes, well, I think that's pretty good.
And are you doing anything at Cubic that differentiates yourselves from the other vertical? There's a handful of companies that, or some are private, some trade on the stock exchanges around the world. Anything that you're doing different than your competition?
Yeah, so as a company, we're focused on the technology side of automated indoor farming and the mechanization. So what I mean by that is there's lots of other vertical farming companies, and nothing I'm saying is disparaging any of them in any way. But as a company, but most others in the space are developing some technology and then building big sort of warehouse farms and then growing and selling produce. And that's sort of one approach. We're strictly focused on developing the technology, selling that to farmers, and helping them to be successful. So as a company, we were founded by farmers, both the cubic farm side, founded by great Dutch greenhouse farmers. On the hydrogreen side, the live green animal feed technology was developed by a career cattleman who had thousands of head, across 4 states, and really struggled to feed them consistently. So farmer founded technology that we continue to develop, further automate, and then sell to farmers. And then we're focused on mechanization. So in other words, removing labor, removing costs so that the food that's grown in these systems is as affordable as possible. Because at the end of the day, we're growing food. We need to replace, field farmed, long chain, food supplies with local chain, um, you know, locally produced indoor. So that's really the biggest difference is we're focused on the tech and we're focused on the automation of that. And many others are sort of what we call a rack and stack, one row of light, one row of plant, one row of light, one row of plant, built on tall scaffolding sort of in warehouses where we're focused on the automation of indoor farming.
Yeah, I would encourage the viewers to take it upon themselves, maybe just YouTube some of your videos that I've seen, and we've had discussions before, and you've shown me some of these videos of your technology at work, and it's quite fascinating. Maybe the last question is just what are you most excited about for investors, I guess, seeking growth in your company? Is there new product lines, new technologies? What's coming over the next couple of years that excite the two of you as executives at Cubic?
Yeah, it's a thrilling time to be in this line of business. On both sides of the business, we're just seeing tremendous growth. So on the CubicFarms side, the plant and vegetable side, the team is constantly developing new cultivars that we're able to grow within our system. So it opens up new total addressable markets. So we've got deals now pending in most places in the world, and so we're always testing the different varieties of crops that'll be popular in those regions. So as those come on, it just opens up a new market. And then further automation. So, the little labor we have in the system, continually, pushing more and more of that out. On the live green animal feed side, Hydrogreen is just about to deploy its largest ever installation. It'll be 12 of our, we call it our GLS 808. And that is going on to a farm called the Burnett Dairy. They've got 17,000 head, both beef and dairy, and we'll be doing some very large scale testing. We'll be doing small scale testing, getting the results of animals eating the feed, and the results are just spectacular. But it's on a test of about 200 head. We'll be able to test thousands of head, and yeah, so we're super excited about just more and more larger farms for both Cubic and Hydrogreen as this really comes into its own. Tim, what have I missed on what we're excited about?
I think that the biggest innovation on the at our company is going to be in the predictive farming space, and where we're developing additional software and machine learning processes, getting to the point where artificial intelligence is possible with our equipment. Understanding even before a particular cultivar is selected, what are the ideal growing conditions using our equipment and technology. I think it's fascinating. The whole area, we've just made a really key hire with Edo DiMartin coming in from a senior position at Microsoft. He's building out his team quickly, and we're developing this huge database and data bank of information that's going to be used for our equipment in the future, and also growing vegetables in the future. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, great, gentlemen. Tim and Dave, thanks for chatting with me today. And we're quite excited about the future of food, and not only opportunities on the technology side, but just as you mentioned, is better tasting food, getting to everyone in the world, and that growing population over the next few decades in an economical standpoint with scale is going to be key. We just don't want to be creating these type of products for people that shop at Whole Foods, for example. If we can get it at every No Frills and Loblaws across Canada and Kroger across the States, that's going to be a big help for feeding mouths. So thanks, guys, and we'll chat with you soon.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.